welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. I am very excited to be meeting with a fellow leadership expert across the sea. And today I am meeting with Ralph Peterson. So welcome and thank you for your time today, Ralph.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's going to be fun.
It is. And just before I hit record, Ralph has kicked off his day at 4 a.m. his time to allow us to meet. So we'll dive into that a little bit later. But before we get too far, can you tell me a little bit about where you have come from and where you're going?
Absolutely. Well, let me just kind of first tell you where I'm going. I think it might be a little better is that I am a management development coach, much like yourself. And when you get into the big question I always get when people find out that I'm a management development coach, they always want to know, A, what is that? And then B, it's not the best title to describe what it is that we do. And then B, how does somebody get into it? And quite honestly, I think you get into this field like you get into anything else, and that is, ass backwards. You don't intend it, you didn't see it coming, and that's just how it is.
Absolutely.
I got my first promotion when I was 16 to become a manager, a foreman, a job foreman, doing landscaping. And I was terrible at it. I lost that job in about 8 minutes, like world record time. Being a manager went straight to my head. Like I literally thought I was better than everybody else and I could boss everyone around. And although I lost that job very, very quickly, I got to tell you, I was bitten by the wonderful, romanticizing feeling of being in charge, of being a manager, of having that title that I have always, ever since that day, wanted to be in charge. I take charge. It doesn't matter if I'm supposed to, if I'm not supposed to. I love it. I love it. And so I've always gravitated towards leadership. I got, I would get done at one job, or I would get fired at one job, and the next job I would get, I wouldn't be there very long before I was trying to figure out how to get to the assistant manager position and then get to this shift position that, always just trying to figure out how to get into the management position. It wasn't until about 10 years later, I started working for a company that was a management company, and they're growing by leaps and bounds. And I was really into it. And it was working in healthcare. And it was the first time that I had grown from manager to a district manager, or a manager of managers.
Different
and I had to
fish.
Oh my gosh, it was so challenging because now I had to hire, train, and recruit managers. And, of course, nobody is like me. And so nobody's just coming out, wanting to be a manager. I'm trying to talk people into being a manager.
And
I'm like, you can do it.
There's this misconception as well that by the time you're managing managers should know what they're doing, but that's more often than not, that's not the case.
It really isn't. And so I started having a weekly meeting with my management team. I had 8 managers under me, and every Wednesday night we would meet in this nursing home. This tiny little nursing home had a conference room in the basement of this nursing home. So every Wednesday night was the only time that conference room was free. Every Wednesday night from like 6 to 7 o'clock, we would go down and we would just talk about management. And I would try to explain, and, this is how you talk to people. This is how you do, I don't have to tell you, Allie, our job is to have difficult conversations with difficult people. And that is a challenge when you're brand new in management. I mean, it's the last thing we want to do. So for months, I'm in this basement talking to these brand new managers of mine, people I'm trying to cajole into management. And what I didn't know is the guy who owned the nursing home owned a bunch of them. And so every night he would be in a different nursing home. And it turns out every Wednesday night he was in that nursing home listening to me lecture and talk about management on my team. So a couple months in, he asked me to come meet with him, and I thought I was in trouble. I was like, oh, here we go. I go in and I meet with him, and he said, I've been listening to you for 8 weeks now, every Wednesday night. is this what you do for a living? Like, what exactly do you do? And I was like, no, I manage this other part, but I need to recruit managers. And so he's like, I need you to start training my managers.
Ah, awesome.
And that's how organically how it happened. I was like, really? He's like, absolutely. Nobody's talking like you're talking. Nobody's explaining like you're explaining. And before you know it, I had a whiteboard and
I mean, and that's pretty much the official role, isn't it? Once you've got a whiteboard, you're set, you're it. That's legit. Yeah.
1,000,000%. Yeah. A whiteboard is it.
That is an amazing transgression from one step to the next. And I can certainly, when you're explaining, getting into your first management role when you were 16, I have a very, very similar story that I joke about as well. I used to work at Bilo, which is like a shopping centre or like a grocery store here, but it was like the black and gold brand, so home brand. And I was managing the front end of the shopping centre before I was old enough to sell cigarettes. So then I had to ask my team who were old enough to sell cigarettes to sell it to the customers because I wasn't old enough to do it. And yes, also had a baptism of fire a few years later into a very difficult workplace that ended up being, difficult conversation after difficult conversation with difficult people in difficult circumstances. And, if it doesn't kill us, it makes us stronger. And that is certainly the case for me. So I love that. So tell me a little bit about how you've gone from managing and leading these leaders within that organization to going and doing what you're doing now. And do you work with just one organization or across, and how do you work with them?
Yeah, so no, I work with anybody who is interested in becoming in charge. And so organizations hire me to meet with their leadership team. And every time, and you know what, it was just brought up to me because I kind of do it, and I didn't even realize I was doing it because it wasn't like a selling pitch of mine. But every time a company would say, hey, I want you to come in and meet with my managers or my supervisors and, show them, give them like a 1-day seminar or 2-day seminar.
Mm-hmm.
I am always saying, when are your assistant managers going to be in? Are you going to open it up to people who are just interested in leadership, who maybe want to grow later?
Yeah.
And I was just having a conversation with a client, and he said, you always do that. You always want to include everybody who is interested in management. And I was like, I guess I do it as a default. And the reason is because I wasn't, you don't get asked to attend, or you're not allowed to attend leadership classes until you're a leader.
Mm.
And in my opinion, for me, that was way late. I should have read the book, attended the seminar, had the talk before I took the leadership position. I would have been way more successful.
And maybe decided you didn't like it on the other hand as well,
1,000,000%. So I speak to everybody, and I'm always interested in first-time managers. People who just get the leadership role. And the statistics behind a first-time manager is staggering. 2/3 fail in the first 90 days. It's 7 out of 10 new managers, your super worker, somebody we just promoted into a leadership position, is going to fail in 90 days. That doesn't say a single thing, by the way, about that individual.
Yep, 100%.
It says everything about how you used the term baptism by fire. That is how that's what we do to new managers. We take our super workers and we either work in the death. Oh, they'll always come in for us. And okay, so now they're working 24/7. They can't do it for long. And so we're going to burn them out. Or we keep adding on to their payload to include management, and we don't give them any training. And we literally treat our super workers as they're disposable. And here's the thing, they're not. There is so few super workers out there. Hence the need for managers,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that we don't talk about enough, is that people that are the super workers, the natural career progression is for them to become leaders. And whilst they might have been a super worker at what they were doing in the past, leadership is a whole nother skill set that they have yet to develop if they haven't been, had a seat at the table. And we kind of expect them, because they're already on the A game at what they were doing previously or technically, we expect them to be on their A game at this completely different skill set without, giving them the support that they need to be able to make that transition. So tell me, when you're saying you like to speak to anyone being in charge, and one of your main drivers was that you wanted to, always go to that next level of leadership. What do you think it is that makes someone a good leader?
I have these 5 tiny little rules that I look for in managers, and they're very simple, and they're very simple, basic. They are: a manager is going to be the type of person that doesn't walk by trash. And I got to tell you, most super workers are the type of people who don't walk by trash. It's very easy for somebody. That's how you get noticed, by the way, is you're the type of person who doesn't walk by trash, right? So that's an easy one.
Right.
My second rule is a manager always has to be on time.
Yep.
Always. Can't be 1 minute late. Not 1 minute. It ruins everything. Rule number 3, you have to dress professionally. As a matter of fact, you don't have, I use the word professionally, but let me say it like this. A manager has to stand out. So I need to be able to see the manager with their team and be able to tell you're the manager.
Yeah.
In construction, it might mean a different color hard hat.
Right.
Right. But in an office, it might be a business suit.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a name tag, but there's got to be something that makes you stand out. When I need help, I need to be able to find the manager. I need to be able to find the manager right away. So you got to stand out from the crowd.
Yep.
Rule number 4 is you have to get all of your work done. You have to be a good worker. You cannot be a manager if you're not a good worker. Because you always have to be visible.
Yeah.
That's easy, right? That's no hiding in your office, no skipping out. Being available to help your team is super important. So those are easy, right? 5 rules. So don't walk by trash, be on time, dress professionally, get your work done, and be visible.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Those 5 rules are for everybody.
Yes.
You don't have to be in charge for that.
Yeah.
You want all your staff to be on time. You want them all to dress appropriately. You want them all to get their work done. Here's the thing I would say about managers, though. This is a little gut check to see if you have the ability to be a manager. Rule number 1 says you're not allowed to walk by trash. If you want to be a manager, you can't walk by trash and you can't pick it up.
Oh, expand on that.
Well, anybody can pick up trash. Anybody can walk around picking up trash. It takes a special person, a person who has the ability to be in charge. It's the person who makes other people pick up trash.
Right. Right. By influence.
By direction.
Yeah.
Pick that up.
Ah, very good.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, this is where I lose a lot of people. A lot of people are like, oh, I would love to be in management. I'm like, absolutely. And I'll go through my 5 rules and I'll go, and you can't pick it up. And you can just see their heart sink. They're like, oh, I can't do it. I wouldn't be able to tell people. Because think about what happens when you tell somebody, when you're walking in your store or your shop in your office, and you're walking and there's an employee standing there, and over beside them, not very close, but not very far, is a piece of trash.
Yeah.
You don't know who put the trash there, how long that piece of trash was there, what it's made of. You have no idea if it's wet, if it's sticky, if it's dry. We have no clue, right? We just see a piece of trash and we see a random employee. You're going to say, hey, pick up that piece of trash. What's that employee going to do?
Hopefully go and do
it. No, they're not going to go do it. That'd be awesome.
Performance review time. Yeah.
Yeah, no. They're going to push back. They're going to say, why should I?
Yeah.
They're going to say, I didn't put it there. They're going to say, why don't you find the person who did instead of busting my chops?
This sounds like my household actually at the moment.
1,000,000%. It's going to be pushback, pushback, pushback. And only a manager, an effective manager, is going to be able to push back against them and to get them to pick up trash. I have a whole training program on how to start getting managers to direct people to pick up trash. Like there's a process. It's not like just automatic. You go from, I always pick up after my team to making my team pick up after themselves. It is a process. But those are my That's what I always look for.
Your 5 rules to a checklist.
Five.
I just wanted to ask about number 4, which is get your work done. I was recently talking with a new leader, and they asked a very interesting question. They're like, well, will my workload increase? And I was like, well, yeah, probably until you get really good at delegating. And then, it's like an elastic, workloads are elastic. So can you talk a little bit around, that transition? Because you said you love new managers, that transition where they kind of go from, A game worker to then leading a team, how getting their work done and balancing managing their team, you may have heard working in the business versus working on the business. What do you recommend people do, new leaders, to get into that habit?
Well, let's unpack this a little bit as far as why don't new managers get their work done? Like, what is the problem? What gets in their way? And you touched on one of them, which is there's a learning curve. There may be a new skill set that they have to learn, a new report they have to generate, a new software program they have to start working with that they didn't know how to do prior. That's really true. That's forgivable. Two of the biggest problems that I run into with new managers when it comes to time management is, number one, they stop paying attention to the clock. A lot of people treat a promotion like they won the lottery, like they never have to work again. Like now their job is to walk around and never have their hands are never empty with a coffee, or they go out and smoke, and they'll take 15 breaks, and now that nobody's able to tell them what to do, they take that freedom and they run with it, and they don't do good things with it. They do selfish things with it. They do personal errands. It gets
take advantage of the power. Yep.
It gets silly. That's one, and that's fixable generally by counseling. But the biggest one that's not because they're a bad worker is they have this concept of an open door policy.
Yes.
A new manager, the romanticizing of an open door policy, it's so fantastic. Can you imagine going to a new team and you saying, I'm the new manager here, and I just want to let you know that it's going to be really great working for me. You're going to love me. And that's because every manager wants to be loved. We all want to be heroes. I mean, that's the whole point of taking a leadership position, is to be a hero, to be able to help somebody do something. It's super important to us. It doesn't matter what level of management you are, you want to be a hero. So let's just focus on that for a second. When you're brand new, not even brand new, I meet very experienced managers who have an open door policy, and it drives me a little insane, because an open door policy does two things. First, it allows you to be interrupted. It allows you to be interrupted. Anybody can, if you have any problem, just come to my door is always open. I get sick to my stomach when I hear somebody say that. But I understand their intention. Their intention is to say, I am available. I am always going to be available, and you can come to me about anything. Don't be afraid to tell me. I mean, you're a mom of 4 kids, right? You want your kids to be open and honest with you and be able to tell you anything. And so you probably have said that to them since the day they were born. Don't ever be afraid to tell mom. It's much better for me to know.
Closed the door in their face too. Leave me alone. I just need some alone time.
Yeah. Well, when they get older. Right? So that is, it's a noble thing that the new manager, or that a manager says when they say, hey, my door is open all the time. The problem with that is twofold. First, the interruption rate. It takes on average, I think, 20 to 25 minutes to get back on task. If you are laser focused on a task and somebody interrupts you, and it could be your cell phone, it can be a noisy email or a text message. That'll take your attention away from your task. And we're talking, you lose minutes, like 10, 20, 15, 20 minutes every time you're interrupted. And how many times you're interrupted with an open door? 10? That's a couple hours a day you're losing in productivity. No wonder you're not able to get your work done.
Yeah.
So that's terrible. I recommend having office hours. And my office hours are generally like from 9:15 to 9:17, only give them a couple minutes, no line, it's funny. But let me tell you the number one reason why not to have an open door policy. The number one reason is because The manager's job is to go find the problems, not wait for the problems to come to them. You are legitimately hamstringing. You're not, if your management technique, if your management strategy is, I'm going to have an open door policy so that if anybody needs to see me, they'll come knock on my door. That is the most ridiculous problem solving methodology ever, because first of all, not everybody has access to your door. Not everybody works next to you. Not everybody can get to you. Not only that, but our job as managers, part of our job is to ensure fairness across our team. Fairness is the glue. Fairness is the glue, by the way. That is what holds teams together. And the manager is the arbiter of fairness. If somebody is getting over on somebody else, if somebody is taking advantage of somebody else, if somebody has taken 5 breaks and everybody else only gets 1 break, that is not fair. And it is up to the manager. It is not up to the team. I have people all the time going, well, they never told me. They're not supposed to tell you, right?
Yeah.
That's not how it works. This is a little concept. They don't work for you. You work for them.
Yes.
Managers work for their team.
Yeah.
The team doesn't work for the manager. It's the manager's job to be able to go out there, assess what's going on proactively, and solve problems. If you want problems come to you in the office, I'm guaranteeing you, you have a lot more haters than you should have out on the floor. A lot more people think, well, if that person that SOB ever got out of his office, it's detrimental to your career. Close the door. That's my advice. Close the door.
Close the door and then leave the office and get out on the floor.
1,000,000%. And I set a timer. So when my head's down and I'm working, I will set a timer, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And I set a timer and I do nothing but what I'm doing. And then I'm like, okay, time to get up and stretch, walking on the floor, meeting with people, making sure I see everybody.
Yeah.
It's super important.
Part of
Do you guys have the app Waze?
Waze,
it's a GPS app.
Oh, I mean,
in Australia.
Not that I know of. What do you do with it?
It's a GPS app for your phone. So it's like, it tells you the directions. It tells you where you're going. You can put in an address where you're going somewhere.
No, we just use Google Maps.
Yeah. Okay. So Google Maps.
Yeah.
So the Waze app, in addition to telling you where to go and how to get there, the fastest route.
Yeah.
It also tells you where, like, there's road construction.
Yes.
Or if there's a pothole, or if there's traffic buildup, it'll redirect you. So you're intentionally going this way, but then it goes, all right, hey, the traffic is piling up in front of you. Get off the exit here.
Here's
and
a better
you'll
route.
get around it.
Yep.
And it also tells you where the police are.
Oh, I don't think ours does that.
Oh, yeah. It'll tell you where the police are. Now that's fun. That's fun for the whole family. So I was working with a police department. We were doing leadership training, and we were talking about the Waze app. And I said, so how are you guys handling this notion that people now I know where you are?
Yeah.
And there was a police officer in the back of the room. He said that he absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And he said that he didn't realize it at first. At first, it was a real pain. He was still trying to hide.
Yeah.
Still trying to hide the cruiser so he could catch you speeding or doing something wrong.
Yeah.
He said, but with this new app, there's really no place to hide. As soon as you park somewhere, they identify you and they'll go, you're here. The police officer's there. And what does everybody do when they know a police officer's there? They slow down.
Yeah.
They obey the rules.
Yeah.
And he goes, so now when I want to have a coffee, I'll grab my coffee, get in the cruiser, go park. I'll open the Waze app myself and check in. I'll be like, I'm right here. Before anybody else identifies, I'm going to identify myself, because he now knows nobody's going to speed by him.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a funny thing, but that is exactly what it's like in leadership.
Yeah.
If your modus operandi right now is to walk into your office or your building or your shop, and you go right to your office and put your bag down and open up your emails, and that's how you start your work, I'm going to challenge you to stop that.
Yes.
Instead, don't even put your bag down. Don't take your coat off. Walk your building. Walk your store. Let everybody see you.
Yeah.
The boss is here. Everybody they slow down. They start doing what they're supposed to be doing. Their hands are at 10 and 2. Super important.
Good circle back. I liked that. Very good. I think that's so true. And I'm assuming that was part of your like be visible is actually, you know, being physically
100%.
visible as well as, you know, having your eyes on your team and what's going on and, you know, just like keeping in check, but then you're also showing that you're available in that way without having to be interrupted all the time. I hadn't realized that to get back on track, it was 20 to 25 minutes. That's fascinating and a little bit
Yeah.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a long time. It
Yeah.
is a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And worse, you know, I can tell, you know, I could just read a report that some manager's written and I can tell that they've either they've they've closed the door and they hunkered down and they did a good job, or they ended up having to bring it home and try to finish a report during, you know, during the commercial breaks of their favorite television show, or
Yeah.
while they're doing the laundry and chasing the
Yeah.
kids, and they're like, "Give me 5 more minutes," and you know, and then the report comes out really crappy, and you're like, "Who wrote this?" You know, because they took it home. I'm
Started
not
out
a,
strong and not a good finish.
exactly. I'm not a big fan of taking work home. Don't
Yeah.
take work home.
Yeah. Good one. Except, you know, now there's a lot of people with work.
Well, yeah.
Good segue.
Now it's hard not to take work home.
That's right. Now you want to like take it back to work. So we were talking about, you know, being visible, but what do you think leaders need to be doing now at the moment in this current situation where we've got people that are working remotely, perhaps for the first time? I know in healthcare it's a little bit different, but more generally where there's, you know, an office where a third of it or 2/3 of it are now working from home, and your team, you've got some in the office, you know, co-located with you so you can be visible, but then you've got others that are checking in via Slack or Teams or whatever
Mm-hmm.
whatever platform it happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
How are they keeping visible?
Well, I gotta say two things about that, and I'm going to say this, and I want to preface it to say that I generally never talk to staff.
Yeah.
I work with managers specifically, people who want to be in charge, who have an
Mm-hmm.
inkling, an idea, have a question about leadership. It's
Yeah.
generally who I ever work with. So I don't generally talk to staff a lot. But I got to say this: if you're a team member and you are now working remotely,
Mm.
it is no longer where you get a job and you can hang out because there's not a lot of work to do and you just, you know, as long as you're there, you're there. When you're working
Yeah.
from home, you have to prove your worth. You have to make a difference. You have to show, you know, it's like doing arithmetic when in grade school. You have to show your work.
Yeah.
You can't
Show
just
you
show
working
off.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to make work. You have to go make, there has to be some productivity coming from you. It's too easy. It's
Yeah.
way too easy now. If I'm working from home and I have a remote team, it's way too easy for me to go, why do I have that person?
Yeah. That's
They've
right.
done nothing.
Yep.
And, you know, you're costing me this much a day
Yep.
and you've got nothing.
Yep. So output
That's,
focused.
it is, when we're at work, you can get lost. And I know you're here because I saw the card you punched in on.
Yep.
So I know you're here. You must be doing something. When you're at home, that must be doing something is way too easy to see that you are or you are not.
Yeah. Very
So
true.
with peace and love, if you're a team member, make sure that you are putting output out there. You are busy. Like, you have to put it in your boss's face. Look what
Yeah.
I made. Look
Yeah.
what I did.
Yeah.
Look. And the truth is, we're looking.
Yeah.
As far as managers go, it is putting the emphasis on something that is always overlooked anyway, and that is clear expectations. Clear expectations. You have to say, this is what we're doing. Not only clear expectations as far as you have to know day to day what your team is doing and how they can communicate with you and how they can report to you, but also, just to go in line with that a little bit, tempering those expectations a little bit, because just because we've all went remote doesn't mean that we're still able to work in the same capacity with kids at home and office space and
Yeah.
computers being shared among family members,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
I
it's
think,
become a challenge.
speaking of kids, you might be able to hear mine at the moment. It is bedtime here. So I think having those clear expectations and communicating those in a really clear way is certainly key to this phase that we're going through, is, you know, and resetting them and reassessing them each time as well. If it's not working, why not? You know, is there a communication breakdown? Is there a capability breakdown? Have we not, you know, said the right things in the right way so that it's gone and communicated it to our team? That's been amazing. So you talked a little bit about being a hero earlier, and you've got a new book out that is a little bit like a hero. Can you tell me a little bit about your new book that is coming out? When's it out?
In the middle of October.
Yes.
And so just a few weeks away. And it's called The Good Manager, Being Great is Overrated.
Love it.
And it is broken up into 3 simple parts. So number 1, we just kind of went over, which is my 5 rules of managers. And that is how to be a good person. So if you want to be a good manager, you have to be a good person. You have to be the type of person who doesn't walk by trash.
Love it.
Right? You have to be the type of person who gets to work on time. You can't take advantage of people. Like, nobody's going to follow you if you're going to take advantage of people.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is you touched on it a little bit earlier, where just because you're a good worker doesn't mean you're going to make a good manager.
Yes.
I hear it all the time.
Yes.
All the time. People, and it's usually in a negative light. Well, you know, just because she's a good worker doesn't mean she's going to be a good manager. Let me just say this. I don't have any other choice. It's not like you can go, hey, we need a new manager. You know who'd be really good for it? That girl, she's not here today because she always calls out. She never gets her work done. But I think if you put her in a leadership position, she'd be way better. No, you cannot do that. You cannot, you're right? Like, if you are ever interested in becoming a leader, being a good person, a reliable person, is number 1. It's super, super important. The second point my book makes is about how to be good at being a manager. So there is being a good person, and there's being good at it. Managing is a skill. It's like learning how to drive a car. There are people who can survive a car trip, and there are people who can drive the heck out of a car, right? Or learning how to ski. One of the best analogies I've ever heard is about skiing. There are people who ski down a mountain, and then there are people who survive down a mountain.
I am definitely option B.
And so being good at managing is something that makes you a really good manager. And by the way, there are these 5, everything with me is 5. There are these 5 golden rules of management, and I'm sure you've heard of them. There are, and these are traps that every manager falls into. They are, managers should choose their battles.
Ooh,
heard that?
It. Yep.
Managers should choose their battles, or a manager should always praise publicly and reprimand privately. A manager should never ask you to do something that they wouldn't do. A manager should treat people the way they want to be treated.
Right.
These are the 5 golden rules of management, and every one of them are wrong. Yeah.
So that's part 2.
Part 2 is how people get it wrong, trying to follow the golden rules of management. Those golden rules will get you in more trouble than you can imagine. And then part 3 is don't be evil.
Oh, I like how we've got
if you want to be
straight
a good
to
manager,
the important part. Don't be evil.
If you want to be a good manager, you have to be a good person. You have to be good at managing, and you can't be evil. But I got to say, let me just add this little piece of this. The only reason why you should not be evil in management is because it doesn't work. If it worked, I would have a different attitude towards it.
Right.
So you think there's
like a bit of evil is necessary sometimes?
No. I'm saying if being evil worked, if it was a legit management tactic, and it got you anywhere, then I'd be all for it. But it doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work. It does just the opposite. It'll set your entire team. Your entire team would rather suffer together in solidarity than to let you be evil to one of them. So it doesn't work.
Good. I think that's a good final tip to have in your book if you're going to be a good manager, is not to be evil.
Don't be evil.
And then you've got the heroes. Does that, anyway, I'll get the book and read it, but I'm sure that ties into the superhero and the villain somehow, does it?
It certainly does. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Oh,
You know,
sorry, plot twist.
a superhero and a villain want the same thing. A
Oh,
villain wants to be loved.
do they?
Of course.
I didn't know that. I
That's
haven't been paying enough
that's
attention to the
oh
villains.
my gosh, the whole point is the reason that they're acting out is because they've been so spurged from
Ah,
society. They have not been liked. They have not been accepted. And they
ah,
want to be. The origin story difference between a villain and a superhero is a superhero figures out how to turn its awkwardness,
mm-hmm.
being able to see through things or run at the speed of
Yeah,
a bullet,
yeah.
uh, that awkwardness into positive. Whereas a villain has always used their awkwardness in a negative because they don't know how to use it for a positive. But they both want the
Ah,
same thing. They
right.
both want respect. They both want love and adoration. They
Yeah.
both want control. It's all about
I'm
the
gonna
work.
have a bit more of a deep dive into some
You're gonna have to watch the
supervillains. I've
kid.
only
You're
been
gonna.
talking about the goodies in my house. We have to have a little talk about the baddies.
That's
Uh,
right.
that's really interesting that you say that though around, about how people want the love and respect. Because I do, I'm sure you've heard of Brené Brown, you would have in our field. And I talk a lot about shame shields and how that is often what is, I guess, the cause of a lot of poor behavior is people are, feeling embarrassed, insecure, the imposter syndrome. And I think that would probably be similar to the villain. What you're saying there with villains is they've got all these skills. They just don't know how to show it in a kind and loving way.
Yeah, a million percent, a million
Yeah.
percent. And again, just to reiterate the power of the manager,
Yeah.
it's up to us to see that stuff and see it going
Yeah.
on and to help people overcome it.
Yeah.
Not for an and again, not for an altruistic reason. I'm
Mm,
not trying to save the world. I'm
mm,
really not.
yeah.
I'm trying to get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Whether it's a product we're producing or a service we're giving,
Yeah.
that's the job of the manager is to see the organization's uh, mission from
Mm,
beginning to end
mm-hmm.
on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
beginning to end, beginning to end, beginning to end. And
Yeah.
I think we have to use every tool at our disposal to get the job done. If you're going to hire a team to do one day, like you're going to pick up people to help dig a hole one day,
Mm-hmm.
you can probably treat them cursely.
Yeah.
You probably don't have to be very patient with anybody.
Yeah.
Heck, the more money you're paying them, the worse you can treat them.
Bigger hole you can get.
Of course, the better the job, the worse you can treat them.
Yeah.
My first book's called Managing When No One Wants to Work. And I make this
Yeah.
whole point that if you're in a field that people would, have studied for and worked their whole lives to work in, you could treat them a lot worse than somebody who just took the job because they needed the job and they don't like the job and they don't like what they're
Mm,
doing and it's not a very glorious job. You can't treat them terribly,
yeah.
right? That's so you have to know that there's a longevity in management, and so the way you treat people matters because
Yeah.
you're not hiring people for one day.
Yeah.
You need that
Got some
repeatable. You
skin.
need them to come back the day after day after day after day, 5 days a week for the rest
Yeah.
of their life, hopefully, to keep
Yeah.
helping
Well,
you produce their service or product. And
yeah.
that's what a
Yeah.
manager's job is.
Yeah. Absolutely. That retention. This has been amazing. I'm very excited for your book when it comes out. Before we finish up today, what is your top 5 tips for up and coming managers? And I know you will like this because it's 5, but we've talked about your 5 rules that's part of your book. What would be outside of that, your top 5?
Well, those are my top 5 outside of that. That's interesting. Uh,
Should we reframe it? What would be your top 5 tips if you're a manager looking to go to that next level of management where you're managing managers?
well,
That transition from managing staff to managing managers.
yeah, the well, I got to say this, that there's such a shortage of managers
Mm,
in the entire world, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It could
mm,
be government, it could be religion, it could be the community, it could be the grocery, it could be the factory. There's so little people that want to step up into a leadership role that it is super easy to get promoted.
Yeah.
The only thing you have to do is get over yourself.
Yeah.
It can't, it can't be about you. It can't be about you. So I would say that, what's fun is, because you're in Australia, I'm sure you know this, but have you ever seen a black swan?
Yes.
Yeah, of course you have, because you're in Australia. You know that prior to 1693, nobody in the Western world had ever seen or heard of a black swan.
No, I didn't know that.
Nobody knew black swans existed. As a matter of fact, it was written quite extensively prior to that time about how white swans were as pure as snow, as everything was about how beautiful and wonderful and majestic white swans are. And the church even came out, and the Bible even speaks of white swans and how beautiful and pure they are. And so nobody believed there was anything other than white swans. Then this guy, this researcher, explorer, goes on the western side of Australia, this Spanish explorer, and he sees black swans.
What the heck?
And he's amazed. So he grabs some black swans and he brings them back to Europe, and it shifted everyone's belief. Like, everybody believed the church. 100 years prior to this happening, they literally burned a guy alive at the stake because he said that the earth went around the sun when the church was saying the sun went around the earth, right? Like, it was they were saying that the earth was the center of the universe, and this other guy was like, I think the sun's the center of the universe. And they're like, heresy, and they burned him at the stake. 100 years later,
it's not funny.
This guy had proof that the church was wrong. Proof.
And black swans.
In black swans. It changed everything. People started to really question, and this, by the way, is the early 1700s. This is right at the cusp of the Enlightened Era. And the Enlightened Era in human history is when the church and science start to separate. And they become two things, because up until this point, the church has been, anytime you have a question of why anything scientific happens, why a volcano goes off, why it rains, why it snows, why it gets hot, the church had a reason. It's this God, it's that God, it's this you've done, it's that you've done. To all of a sudden, wait a minute, that's not true. You didn't even know black swans existed. Right? So it was this huge shift in thinking. And I think it's that type of that huge understanding that there is, the way you see things now is not how you need to see them when you're in charge. So if you're, and that's why I was going over the idea that you should treat people the way you want to be treated. That's a management tactic. People believe that. It's not true. And you have to get over that as a new manager. You go like, no, I'm going to pick up the trash on the floor because I was told never to ask anybody to do anything I wouldn't do. So I'm going to pick up trash. Well, that's not managing. That's being a good person. If you want to be a good person, fine. If you want to be a good manager, you can't pick up trash anymore. You have to make them do it. It's a whole mind shift. And so that's what I think, if you're going to focus on how to go from a super worker to a supervisor, that's what you have to focus on.
Super worker to supervisor. I like that. That could be the next one. Very good. Well, thank you. I had no idea about those black swans. I'll have to Google that.
I have one here. Here we go. There's a black swan.
Is that what prompted the story? It's beautiful.
Yeah, and then I have a white swan thing.
Lovely.
Isn't that funny too? Is that a white swan and a black swan? You could almost say a black swan's a little uglier than a white swan.
It is a little bit, isn't it?
And that's what it's like in management. The idea of being in charge is way prettier than what it is actually being in charge. True story.
Different perspective. Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ralph. This has been awesome, and I'm sure our listeners will be pulling out all sorts of gold nuggets. Good luck with the book launch, and I'll add some links in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was fun.